This video is sponsored by Alpha Draft, where you can play fantasy esports such as Counter-Strike Global Offensive, League of Legends, Dota 2, Smite. Link in the description box below if you'd like to play there. If you're good, you can win money. People win tens of thousands of dollars every week. Hundreds of thousands given away every month. Millions in total, I'm sure, at this point in time. When people talk about the topic of leadership in esports specifically, I've noticed that it's a term that really desperately needs to be unpacked and turned into more than just this tag of leader, like a label, a role, because it's not just one role. The qualities contained within leadership, it's almost entirely unlikely you'll ever find one person who possesses all of the qualities or has any reasonable proficiency in all areas at once. And I think part of the reason why all these qualities and different roles of a leader have been conflated into this one term is because of the fact, in the past at least, we've just made this one role in the game. So one person within a CSGO team, one person within a League of Legends team has to be the leader. And then at that point in time, whether they know it or not, sometimes they don't, which is part of the issue, everything is asked of them that could be asked of a leader. And some of them succeed in one area and that allows the team to be good. But in another area, he doesn't understand that's a part of leadership, or he's not good in that area and they don't assign someone else in the team to do it. And so that's where they break down and that's where they have problems. So if we're going to break down leadership into components, I would break down some of it into this kind of a sense. Okay, yes, you've got the tactician, the man who thinks up tactics, or the tactician who triggers the tactic in the game. Those can be two different people. Then you've got the guy who keeps communication going in the team. Maybe he has the final say on a decision. He streamlines information. Information is given to him. He then passes the relevant information to someone else, or makes a call that triggers someone else to then get involved in some sense and interact with each other. They don't always interact directly with each other. Maybe this is a type of person who manages the emotional level. He leads in as much as he makes sure you're a guy who he knows where everyone's at. Everyone's at the similar kind of balanced level. The guy where he's the thinker in the team. He makes the decisions for everyone. He comes up with the plan. There's the guy where he's the leader in the sense that everyone's watching what he's doing. Everyone's basing what they're doing off the way he's playing. Everyone agrees with what he says. Everyone follows him. He's not even necessarily a dictator in this sense. He's the guy where everyone wants him to be the guy in charge. There's the leader where it's the guy who leads in the sense that he makes you want to join him. He makes you want to follow him. He says, go this way, and everyone naturally follows him. I mean, let's break up leaders into these different kinds of categories and then look at what that made up of and what kind of examples we could pick out of this. So I'll start off immediately with the sort of leader who is this kind of, the last one I referenced there, the kind of leader who like stirs men and leads them into battle. And so in the past, this would be like a military commander or a general or the captain of a particular unit of men. And this is very much that kind of like male solar phallic energy. It's the kind of father figure type guy where not only is he confident and he exudes that he knows what he's doing and this is the way it has to be right now, and he doesn't demand you do it, but it's like he speaks with a force so that when he says it, people naturally, they're magnetized, they're drawn to these people. You'll see them in society, and that's why these people, the alpha males or whatever, people want to do what they say. They want to follow in what they want to say, and there's something charismatic about them that's communicate. That's what this energy is, you know. It does attract males in a certain sense. And so when I think of this, I mean, actually a great fictional example I think of this, the ideal archetype of it is the character of Maximus in the movie Gladiator, the 2000 movie by Ridley Scott, where Russell Crowe plays this character Maximus, and he is this guy who was a Roman general, but he led in this particular manner. He like stirred the spirits up of the best soldiers and made the lesser guys feel like they could put their trust in him, and if you just follow me and I'll lead you and we'll succeed. And people wanted to follow him and they believed in him, and he's the man's man in that particular sense. Now in esports terms, I can think of two really good Counter-Strike examples for this. One is Khan, the legendary 1.6 leader of Fnatic for something like 5 or 6 years. He was the in-game leader in all the senses, like he did the tactics and then triggered them and all that. But those weren't his strengths, really. He had more of a loose tactical style, and his triggering was pretty much more based on the stars. He had Forest, he had Get Right, he had Temple, he had DSN, he had Gux, he had a lot of stars, and he would play more of a loose style around them. So he wasn't so much the tactician, he wasn't so much the brains and all that sort of sense, but he was the leader in this sense. He was the guy where he had the force of persona, of charisma, to make people want to lead him, to make people come along with him willingly. This is the guy where I remember they said it was what's his name? let me think, Bill Russell, one of the most legendary winners in the history of sports, a guy who won 11 NBA championships in the 60s and 70s. And this guy is one of the biggest winners of all time. And he said, like, part of his leadership was this idea that you got to get your teammates to come along with you. You can't just be a great player. They've got to come with you and achieve greatness within the context and proportion of their own skill set and their careers. And part of how you've got to do this is you can't just drag them along and say, hey, I'm the best player, follow me and do this. Like, it's what you have to do is you kind of have to win them over. Like, you have to put your arms around them and bring them with you. It's not, you're not going to drag them with you. You're going to put your arms around them. And the idea is, as you walk forwards and you're this guy who's representing this figure and who do they'd want to follow, and they'd understand why you're a good player and why you're heading in the right direction, they're just going to come with you. And that's the kind of success this sort of leader has. So Khan's a great example of that, because he had all this talent with him, but he didn't win just off the talent. He didn't win off some uber sick tactics. Part of how he won was to make sure that talent felt as though, hey, we've got the right leader, and he's got an overall plan, even if it's not the most genius plan. He's got a plan that'll work, and we buy into this, and we're coming along with him, and wherever he says we're going, and he's the sort of guy who can keep us, so we believe we can win this. We've got Khan on our team. He's the leader. Another good example would be Taz from Virtus Pro, because in 1.6 and more recently when he's been the in-game leader in Virtus Pro and in CSGO, I think these are the periods in general where he's had the most success. His team, that is. And as a player, he tends to be doing pretty well. And part of the reason why I think his teams have the most success is because one of the great qualities Taz always had in 1.6, especially towards the end when he legit was like a second star in the team, is he had incredible heart. He isn't the guy who ever gives up in a game. Even if he's doing badly, he still scraps, he still fights, and he can have like a shit first map. And sometimes on the second map, he'll come back 20 plus kills. He doesn't get down in that sense. He doesn't worry about the fact he's not the star of his team. He's not the best player in his team. He's a leader in this sort of sense. He really is the general in some sense. And he is the guy who tries to give the rousing speech and tries to get his guys going and try to get this guy pumped up and like, this guy, come on man, I know you can dominate now. We know we can do this. He's the guy where he's that kind of like emotional center in that particular sense that you follow. A League of Legends example would be Alex Ich, because he played in a team that could have been so divisive and so fractured. There was factions within the team who don't get on with each other. People hate each other. People don't even interact on the map sometimes. He's playing in a particular manner with players who are very stubborn about the meta, about their styles of play. But he's the leader. He's the best player. He's the player where he's the carry. He's the player where if they set everything up, he's like, listen, you guys set up the rest of the fight. You make your plays here, and I'll carry this fight. You set the table, and I'll deliver. I'll put the food on it. I'll deliver everything we need in this particular sense. And he's the guy where he was so good as well. And he could go head to head with even the best Koreans. And so you did believe in him in this sense, and you wanted to follow him. And this was one of the things that made Moscow 5 so dangerous. Where later on, Gambit Gaming could get this together every now and then. They could be really good, but they weren't like a world beater in the same sense. And the best description of this is that Alex Ich, in his interview, my reflections with him, just after he left Gambit, described it like this, so well put. He just said, I was the leader of Moscow 5, but I wasn't the captain of Gambit Gaming. If you can understand what he means by that, you see the importance of this sort of a figure and how effective it can be when you've got one. Now, another type of leader, totally different type of leadership, is the sort of the tactician. The guy where, hey, maybe he doesn't even know how to lead men. Maybe he's not even a guy who's confident in that sense. He doesn't think of it that way. Maybe all he thinks about is the tactics and how we're going to win in this sense. And so his main thing he relies on, the main way you can think of this guy is he's the guy where he persuades you to rely on him due to his cunning, due to his smarts, due to knowing that whatever the problem is, he'll find a way, he'll find a solution, he'll find an answer, he'll find something we can change that'll give us a chance. And when you have this kind of intelligent guy, I think of this guy archetypally as the reliable friend, the guy where you know his skill set, you know if you come to him, he'll figure things out, and even if you're in trouble, you don't worry about that, because as long as you've got him there, he's going to back you up, he's going to help you out, he's going to figure something out, and you know, okay, whatever he figures out, I'll go along with it. Now, if you want another like fictional archetype for this, a fictional pattern to put this over, I'd say this is like the Odysseus type character. So think of Odysseus. Here's the guy where, later called Ulysses in the Roman tradition, this is the guy where in the story of the War of Troy, okay, you've got like Achilles, who's the star player and all the rest of it. You've got all these other people. You've got Agamemnon, who's the leader, who stirs you and tries to be the guy you follow, etc. But the thing about Odysseus and Ulysses is he's the guy where it's all about the cunning. And if you're working with him, you know that he can convince like a great fighter to do something, because he'll convince that guy, like, hey, I know best in this particular sense, and if you just follow my plan, I'm going to be the strongest, but follow my plan and it'll work in this way. And he's that kind of a leader, and you buy into his thing there. And if you do, and everyone executes what he says, you know you've got a chance to win, you've got a chance to succeed. So in CS terms, I'm going to go first of all with Ave, the legendary Danish 1.6 leader, because he was a guy where you look at his career, and aside from 1 year when he won a lot, 2008 and then early 2009, he won like 4 or 5 big championships. He was in the best team in the world, the most competitive year. Aside from that, you'd look at his career and you'd go, oh, this guy was actually a bit of an underachiever. He kind of failed in some senses. And if you do so, because you see all these seconds, all these thirds, making top fours all the time, you'd actually have totally mischaracterized his career, and you'd misunderstand his genius and his success. The key thing about this guy was he put so much time into researching the enemy, into coming up with strategies, into figuring out a base set of strategies and then variations I can make on it within a round and improvisations I can make within a round, and getting his teams to buy into that his teams got all these top fours, got all these finals in eras where they weren't the best team, and they were versus some of the most godlike dominant teams of all time, and they could compete with them, occasionally beat some of them, and get consistent top 4 placings, consistently making finals, consistently winning 70-75% of their games. And the reason why is because he had full implementation of the tactical side, and he had the guile and the cunning and the smarts, and people bought into it. And as a result, a hallmark of his teams is not only did they nearly always go deep in tournaments, no matter when they lost, but they would nearly always get rounds in games. No matter even if it's the enemy's map, no matter even if it's going badly early on, they'll grind back into a game. They'll get rounds on the board even if they lose. They very rarely got blown out like 16-1, 16-5, 16-6. This was a team that seemingly always got to 9 rounds no matter what. And more likely, if they're going to lose, it's going to be like 16-13, 16-14. He's going to find solutions even within a game and for a certain enemy that's going off. And as a result, his teams also, they could play the gods of the game. They could play Neo, they could play Forrest. And his teams famously, to a degree, could limit a player like Forrest, who was an absolute monster, who could tear the whole game apart because he's so the highest skill level in the history of the game. He could deal with them in a sense. It's not that he could beat them, it's not like he could shut them down, but he could neutralize them slightly, or he could take some of the edge off, or he could contain them to a degree, so there was a chance to play around them. This is a guy where everyone on his teams bought into him, everyone understood the quality this guy had. So in CSGO terms, the guy who you have to refer to on similar level is Existence. When he had all the stars, he put them in the right constellation to eventually become the best team and to supplant NiP, the most dominant team in history, who seemed impossible to ever beat, and take over the top spot and be beating them routinely. Then later in his career, in the latter half, he's had much less talent to work with. He's never been on the best French team anymore, because that's Happy's LDLC envious team now. Instead, he's working with scraps, and he's putting it together marvelously to at times be able to make finals, to at times be able to win best of 3s of the best team of all time, Fnatic, to at times be able to get top 4s, routinely top placings, winning maps off big teams, despite having lesser talent, less chances, less opportunities. But he gets everyone again to buy into his smarts. And you see, even in the bad latter day Titan, the one of RPK and Maniac and Kenny S and Apex, on certain maps, Inferno, on Cash, one of the things that would make them so good is he'd come up with this innovative smoke here. He'd come up with a little flash here. And the idea is, by getting people to buy into the guy, like, listen, guys, they might have the better players, they might have the better team play, they might have the better results, but you know what? I've got some tricks in my bag. I've got some aces up my sleeve. Stick with me, guys. Follow what I'm doing. The system will work. The system will make you better. We'll get the most out of you where their system might not. Their loses system. I've got some tricks for us. If things are going wrong, I'll call the genius play. Don't you worry about any of that. Just put your faith in me, put faith in my cunning, my smarts, my reading of the game, and I'll figure it out. Now, if you want to talk about League of Legends terms, the first name who comes to mind is Reapered, legendary top laner who was a carry star in his own right in Azubu Blaze, MiG Blaze, and SK Telecom, later Jin Air Falcons, but in Jin Air Falcons he dropped off being a star very much so. So this was the guy where, again, he was just a genius for the game, and his shot calling from a star position was incredible. His understanding of map awareness, despite the fact he's playing a one-on-one lane where you're trying to beat the other guy out, and it was a snowball era, his understanding of the whole map, of where we're going to rotate to, how we're going to play within this, coming up with comps, creating certain kill lanes for his bot lanes, etc., being able to match up against better teams overall with more talent when he's in the SK Telecom era. Just an amazing, amazing guy, and as a result, everyone did buy in. I mean, this guy won an IEM championship, beating out a legendary Fnatic team, placing ahead of SK, or, well, actually SK wasn't that well, that one, placing ahead of CJ with Dade and Insec, etc. And the reason he was able to do this, taking these solo queue talents, who weren't even that talented actually, that's just the way people call them, some of them were like platinum in Korea, he was able to take these kinds of people, and by getting them to fully buy into his system, even players like that, weak pieces, he could move them like on a chessboard and he could still find success. Now you want to talk about another type of leader. How about the leader where tactically he might not be so brilliant, he might not be this strong force who leads by example and makes you want to, or rather leads by like, say this is the way we're going to do it, and it stirs you and the charisma to make you want to do it. But how about the leader who's a leader in terms of managing the emotional state of his team, of encouraging them, of figuring out the type of guy where this guy can't do much right now. He's fucking up. He can't contribute a lot. But you know what? If I speak to him in the right way, if I get through to him and I show him that I empathize with him, I can put myself in his perspective. I understand that I'm better than him, but I can put myself in his shoes and know that I don't expect the same from him as I do from myself. I'm maybe a better player. I've got my star player and I expect more from him in a different sense. All I need from this guy is, listen, trust in us, contribute something to the game. Okay, you can't do this thing that you're failing at, but you can do this thing, okay, this other thing. Just do that. If you can just do that, we'll do the rest. That's all I need from you, man. This guy, this is the older brother figure. This is the guy who encourages you. This is the uncle who's interested in you, wants to take you fishing or whatever. No fishy business. And if I'm talking about a sports example I've got for you here, one of the best examples ever has to be Scottie Pippen from the Chicago Bulls. Because Scottie Pippen had this ultra alpha star player, best player of all time, Michael Jordan in the team. And that guy was so competitive, so driven, so brilliant that he couldn't empathize. He was almost sociopathic with any of his teammates. To him, his other teammates were all just shitters who weren't good enough and they were fucking up and failing and he was dropping 40 and then they were losing them the game because they couldn't get the 6 rebounds or get that one extra shot off when he passed it to them when they were open. And this is what held Michael Jordan back early on. But when Scottie Pippen came along, it wasn't just that Scottie Pippen had this all-around talent. It's that Scottie Pippen, if you know his career history, he was like one of the youngest in a huge family of kids or something, so he probably didn't have a whole lot of attention from people. He was a guy where he was too short when he went to university, and he was just like a guy who was like the manager or some shit, and then he grew and finally got onto the team. So because he was always in these lesser positions of being the guy who was the scrub, the guy who couldn't compete, who couldn't get anything done, who had no attention, he understood where those guys were coming from. He understood how important it is to have a support network, people encouraging you, giving you something you can do a task, building that, developing that. He understood the importance of the confidence that can build and how those guys, when they become good, like he did, then can make up facilitating support structures, scaffolding for the superstar to then carry the whole game. And because he understood this, where Michael Jordan was the asshole driving people away and making it really hard for some of them, he would be the guy who'd come along with the friendly hug and with the, listen, don't worry about that. Like, he just means it in a different way and encouraging them. And hey, listen, oh, in the game, I can see you aren't really going, so I'm going to get you the ball here just so you have a look, so you have a touch. I'm going to get you a shot at this point. Don't worry, I'll keep you in the game. You just keep plugging away, doing the things I ask you, rebound, hustle, try and help, try and pass properly, get open, and I'll make sure that you get involved in the game. And don't worry about that. You can find a way to contribute because we need you. Now, that sort of a person, I can give you some examples in CSGO. In CSGO, the best example is probably Pronax, because Pronax isn't that brilliant tactically. Pronax isn't a leader who actually can lead men in the other sense. What's great about Pronax is that he's the guy where he does have some in-game leading stuff in terms of the tactics at mid-round calls, but the main thing about him I've noticed is you ever watch, like there's a subtitled a few VODs of Fnatic in some of the majors and at the ESEA Pro League that they've played where the FPOV VODs were there. Well, not FPOV, just the POV VODs where you could hear the team comms. And when you hear him talk in that sense and you see interviews with him, you know that he's not a guy who's like overbearing in his opinion, who tells players they have to play this way and who gets mad at people in that sense. What he is he's the guy where he's calming people down. He's like, listen, don't worry. Like, what really happened on that last round? It seems like, yeah, to your eye, we'd think maybe it was just the kills that went wrong there or they're dominating in this fashion. That's not it. All we did there is we had a good plan. We didn't quite execute it. But you know what? If we try again in this way, I think we can get it done this time. And you know what? We only have to get one round out these next 4 rounds. Just calm down, everyone. And you know what? The comms, they're just off a little bit. And if we can get those up again, even if you're not sure what's going on, just communicate a little bit more. Let's get the energy going in that sense. And we'll start to turn this around. Let's just do this together, guys. What a great example of a guy in that sense. In League of Legends, let's look at High. Now, people think of him as the brilliant shot caller and the inventive guy, and he definitely had a lot of that. He had some of the Odysseus quality to him, but I'm thinking of him more in terms of this sense because of an interview I did with Skara that's upcoming, where he makes a really interesting point about it, which is that the idea is that High's the guy where he could empathise with all his teammates. He could look at different teammates, see what they need, see what they're going to do, see in the areas in which they're stubborn, and find a way to make them able to work within the team, to give them something they need, to give this guy a pick-me-up, to get that guy involved in the game, to cover a weakness of this guy, to give up something from his own game sometimes, to give wards, sometimes give up a winning lane even, to facilitate other lanes, to facilitate other people to feel comfortable and that they're in the game and that they can always win because they're all getting what they need. He's giving them what they need to feel emotionally stable in that sense, and to always know that, listen, no matter what's happening, let's just stay calm, manage our emotional level. We're going to get chances to come back. We know we can do this. Let's not get too excited. Let's not get too angry with each other. Let's just keep plugging away and it'll work for us. Then there's another type of leader. Now, this type of leader, it can be questionable in a sense to call him the leader, because often this type of guy isn't the leader directly in terms of he doesn't usually cover the tactical aspect. This is the leader, though, who leads in as much as he's the emotional leader, not from like managing the emotions, but as in when he speaks, everyone has to listen no matter what he says, because he may be the best player. He's maybe the player with the most force about him. He's maybe the player who's going to carry the game, and so everyone's listening. Everyone's cued into his frequency. This is the role model. This is the Achilles type guy, just the best fighter, the greatest, the one that we know can carry us to success. Now, it's rare they do get a leadership role, so I'm thinking more in CSGO terms, Shox, when he was at his peak in very games. You knew, even if you were screaming, sometimes you could be shaky and sometimes you worried about how things were going and you didn't always live up to potential. You know, if you're some of the other players, Smiths, who can be a bit hit and miss, you know, as long as we have Shox, and as long as we follow what he's doing, and as long as we follow up on what he's doing, he can win the whole game for us. And if we put him in good positions and we do whatever he asks, he can win this whole game for us. He's the guy that we all follow. Then you look at like Get Right. Again, he can save us all from these situations. We don't need to be too stressed in our role because we always know Get Right's coming behind and he can win an amazing 1v3. He can win a sick 1v1. He can follow up and get that sick trade kill when he needs to. League of Legends terms, how about Wei Zhao? The whole game's built around him. Doesn't matter if there's flaws in other areas. This guy, to some degree, was shot calling as well in the Prime World Elite, but he's so good, so mechanically perfect. Again, if we follow what he says, if we build the game around him, if we get to the points of the game where he's most effective, we know he can do this for us. So you can see the different, some of them quite drastically different components or aspects of being a leader. And it's rare that usually one person does take up all these roles. In fact, I think in some of the best teams in history, it works best when you divide the roles up. So you have a guy who's the tactician. Now, maybe in Cloud9 in League of Legends, that was more Lemonation's role. Maybe he was more that. But calling the in-game strategy, that was more High. And then calling certain aspects of in-game strategy, objectives, you allow Meteos to have a say in that. So he feels like he's doing that in that sense. And then High's also there to be the emotional leader and to manage that, etc. And who's the best player, though? Maybe the best player who can't be questioned on certain things is Meteos. Maybe he has to have that role. Then you go over into other games, you can see where this all applies. The point is, I think a lot of the way that some of the great teams do it is if you don't have an ultra genius who can do it all, it's very rare they ever have existed. The best way instead, perhaps sometimes unconsciously or just through trial and error, is to find other people who aren't the leader, but they take up these leadership roles. So there's another guy who does lead the guys in the battle. Then there's a guy who has the smarts who can do the tactics. Then there's a guy who keeps everyone in check, etc. Sometimes you can have 3 or 4 different people do this. I mean, a great example tactically was in CS 1.6, the great Fnatic lineups, which again, routinely top 4, winning medium-sized events all the time, always in contention for majors, even if they didn't win it. They weren't just Khan doing it, because he wasn't the best in-game leader tactically. But he had a decent foundation, a good system, comparable to Pronax in the later days of CSGO Fnatic. But he had DSN. And the good thing about DSN was, every now and then, he could have DSN to take up some of the conning role. DSN could read the game sometimes and say, actually, in this round, let's try this instead. And then Khan knew, like, okay, let's put our faith in him. He's going to have the conning right now. And he knew when to delegate that in that particular sense. Meanwhile, someone like Get Right, when he came into the team, is very forceful. Maybe he has to be the best player role. Maybe you have to let him be that guy who goes in that particular sense. This is what's interesting about these different sorts of personalities. They're not even always divided among the star and the support and the most intelligent guy, or the one with the best tactics. But you can see how leadership's actually a very detailed, in-depth topic that needs to be broken down to more than just, I'm the leader. Oh, what does leader mean? Oh, leader means shot call. Does it? Leader means best player. Oh, does it? Leader means role model. Like, does it though? It means all these things. It means none of them, depending on who you're talking about. So I think leadership's a very interesting topic. So thanks, Sofa Draft, for the money.